Hello everyone. For this video, we will talk about the structure of depressions. So, hindi ito yung naramdaman nyo nung nagbi-midterms kayo sa iba't ibang subject. Ibang depression to. Okay? So, ito yung depression na meron tayo sa iba't ibang parte ng atmosphere. Most specifically sa troposphere. At pag-uusapan natin dito is all about the air mass and the different fronts. So what is a depression? A depression is an area of low pressure, wind, cloud, and usually rain. So dito natin makikita sa isang area ng depression, meaning dito may masamang panahon. Dito may bagyo. Dito nagbi-build up ang bagyo. Dito nagkakaroon ng low pressure area. Dito nagkakaroon ng pagbaba ng atmospheric pressure, paglakas ng hangin or pagkakaroon ng pagbugso or gustiness na tinatawag natin sa wind. And ito yung tinatawag nating pagkakaroon ng biglaang pag-ulan ng matagal o kaya ay yung intermittent rain in meteorological terms. Dito yan sa loob ng depression. A depression or low pressure system is a place in the atmosphere where air rises in a spiral o paikot o pataas na motion, pataas ng atmosphere. As it does so, it drags the in air from the surroundings. In the tropics or doon sa, let's say dito sa may bandang Pilipinas, Southeast Asia, this is tropics, or dito sa may south of North America, Latin America, north of South America, north of Africa, West Africa, South of Africa, yan, tropics yan, no? So in this area, this depression will grow and grow until it becomes a hurricane. Sa ating tropical Pacific, it will be a typhoon. Sa area natin sa Indian Ocean, it will be a cyclone. So nagsisimula lahat dyan sa depression. Pag-usapan natin yung air mass because ang bumubuo sa depression, we have air mass, we have the fronts, and these are the family of depression. Simulan mo natin sa air mass. An air mass forms whenever the atmosphere remains in contact with a large, relatively uniform land or sea surface for a time sufficiently long to acquire the temperature and moisture properties of that surface. So it is a large body of air. That's why it is called an air mass. It is a specific body of air, not the wind, but air. So it is not air in motion na matatagpuan mo lang sa isang area. The most suitable conditions for the development of this air mass is a combination of a uniform part of the Earth's surface and the presence of a large anticyclone for at least 3 days. For example, meron diyang anticyclone or tinatawag nating high pressure area or HPA na magtatagal dyan in 3 days. Diyan nagkakaroon tayo ng build-up ng air mass. And the slack surface pressure gradient and low wind speed of the anticyclone enables the air mass to acquire its properties. We have different source regions of air masses. Pwede itong subtropical, temperate, and polar. Okay, so meron itong, for example, we have classification of air masses. Tandaan natin. So we have the tropical air mass, polar, or the Antarctic air mass. And these are classified into tropical, polar, or Arctic, or matatagpuan natin sa Antarctica. And this is to indicate their source region and their relative temperatures. Siyempre, Arctic or the Antarctic air mass originated in the Arctic region or the Antarctic circles and are colder than the polar air mass, which originates in the south or north of this region. Air masses are further subdivided into maritime or high in area of high humidity or continental or low humidity. So pag sinabi nating this is a maritime air mass, that is a high humidity air mass, and continental low humidity. We have different characteristics of air masses. So simulan natin kay tropical maritime air mass. Abbreviation TM. So the source region of this tropical air mass is the subtropical ocean like the Azores. And the temperature here in this area is high because of to have a high humidity, you need high temperature. So the relative humidity here is very high. In the tropical continental or TC, we have the Sahara deserts or the subtropical deserts, which have a very high temperature, of course, being a desert, but low relative humidity or very low relative humidity. Next is the polar continental. So, ang source region niya is the Europe or some temperate continental area. And the temperature here varies with the season. Ano ba yung mga season natin? We have summer, winter, fall, and spring. Okay? So, diyan nagva-vary yung mga temperature inside this polar continental region of Europe. And the relative humidity here is low. Next is the polar continental or PM. So matatagpuan to sa Asian areas above latitude 50 degrees Celsius or in 50 degrees Celsius, and we have the low temperature but high relative humidity. And in the Arctic, syempre, sa Arctic regions or Antarctic, in the Arctic ice cap matatagpuan, we have very low temperature and we have low relative humidity. So isa-isahin natin. Specifically, what are the weather conditions in area of air mass? As an air mass is a volume, an air mass is a volume of air defined by its temperature and water vapor content. Of course, if it is maritime, it has high humidity or high water vapor content. If it is a continental air mass, it has low water vapor content. And air mass cover many hundreds or thousands of miles and adapt to the characteristic of the surface below them. For example, the Azores or the Sahara Desert. Okay, so malaking area siya. So, doon mo matatagpuan yung isang region ng air mass. They are classified according to latitude also in their continental or maritime source region. Colder air mass are termed as polar or Arctic. Siyempre, malamig sa area na yan. That's why the air mass there are cold. While the warmer air masses are deemed tropical. Siyempre dito sa tropics or the tropical countries, asahan natin kapag summer, summer talaga, sobrang init. Pero kahit winter na, may time of the day pa rin na mainit siya relatively or humid. Asahan natin just like our weather today. So or yung mga nakaraang panahon natin is mga bandang alas 10, alas 11 hanggang alas 2. Humid or napaka-alinsangan ng panahon. And then pagpatak ng mga alas 2, alas 3, alas 4, umuulan na. Okay, so dahil nagbi-build up yung pressure, yung humidity, nagbi-build up yung rain clouds at maya-maya magkakaroon na ng rainfall. That is what happening in the tropics. And it is because of the air mass. Weather fronts separate air masses. So pag-uusapan natin mamaya yung mga weather fronts or the different fronts of these air masses. And it has a different density, these air masses. Once an air mass moves away from its source region, underlying vegetation and water bodies can quickly modify its character. For example, nag-move yung isang polar air mass O kaya naman na ito pinakamagandang example sa Canada wherein it has a polar air mass, malamig dyan. Makikita mo yan sa pagbabago ng mga puno o yung maple leaf. Okay, nagbabago yung kulay nila as per the season. Maaaring yan ay magiging green, orange, pula. Okay? So, nasa season yan. Kaya yun yung sinasabi nating nagbabago yung vegetation sa lugar. Okay, isa-isahin natin yung mga iba't ibang air masses. First, we have the tropical maritime air mass or TM. Tropical maritime air mass originate over the warm waters of the tropics and Gulf of Mexico. So, tropical maritime, tropics siya, and Gulf of Mexico, hindi ibig sabihin na galing siya sa Gulf or galing siya sa body of water, that's why maritime. Kasi galing siya doon sa isang area with high humidity or humid area, just like the Mexico or Gulf of Mexico. Wherein in this area, heat and moisture are transferred to the overlying air from the waters below o yung evaporation ng tubig from the Gulf of Mexico. This evaporation of the body of water, just like the Gulf of Mexico, is masasabi natin na ma-magnify ng temperature in the form of rise of the relative humidity in the area. And the northward movement of the tropical air mass transport warm, moist air into the United States, increasing the potential for precipitation. So sabi ko nga, pag maalinsangan yung panahon, asahan mo maya-maya, uulan yan. Kasi nagkakaroon ng build-up ng water vapor, nagkakaroon ng build-up ng humidity. Pag maraming water vapor, pag malakas yung degree or rate of evaporation, mabilis yung formation ng clouds. So pag maraming formation ng clouds, kakapal yung density niya, magkakaroon ng rugged area. For example, from the development of autocumulus, from cumulus congestus to stratocumulus to nimbostratus, maya-maya cumulonimbus na yan, uulan na yan. Okay, so nagsimula lahat yan sa build-up of humidity. The tropical maritime is the most important moisture-bearing and rain-producing air mass throughout the year. In winter, it moves poleward and is cooled by ground surface. Consequently, it is characterized by fog or low stratus. So, yung kind of stratus cloud, which is fog, it is characterized by the having of tropical maritime in the area or having the stratocumulus clouds with drizzle and poor visibility. A steep lapse rate aloft in regions of cyclonic activity ensures the occurrence of heavy frontal and convective rains. In summer, the characteristic of the TM or tropical maritime air mass over the oceans in zones of cyclonic activity are basically the same as in winter over warm continental areas. However, the air mass is strongly heated so that instead of fog and low stratus, widely scattered and locally heavy afternoon thunderstorms occur. Okay, so ibig sabihin kapag tumindi yung tropical air mass, magkakaroon or lumawak yung tropical air mass from the Gulf of Mexico papunta dun sa inland which is the North America, titindi yung humidity, magkakaroon ng build-up of stratus. Okay? Kaya maya-maya it will transform into cumulus. Maya-maya ay stratocumulus na siya, going to nimbus stratus, and then maya-maya cumulonimbus na. And then, magkakaroon tayo ng locally heavy afternoon thunderstorms. Another type of air mass is the tropical continental air mass, and this air mass is hot, dry, and unstable at low levels and generally stable aloft. Continental tropical air masses originate in northern Mexico, and they are characterized by clear skies and negligible rainfall. So magkakaroon tayo ng tropical continental, masasabi nating we have the tropical continental air mass if we can see that we have the clear skies at kapag naman nagkaroon ng rainfall, konti lang o kaya locally or kalat-kalat. Pero hindi naman siya malakas or hindi naman siya sabihin nating magtatagal. And tropical continental air mass produce high air temperatures well above the seasonal average. During the day, unstable conditions and convections current develop. However, in spite of its sea passage, the relative humidity of the air mass is low. Thus, there is a general lack of cloud, and air temperature is enhanced, haze may develop. So, in the case of tropical continental naman, this is a low air mass. So, magkakaroon ngayon ng kakaunting cloud. Okay? But the air temperature will be high, so haze may develop o yung tinatawag nating other form of hindrance in the visibility like haze. Another type of air mass is the polar continental air mass or PC. It is also known as continental arctic air mass or CA, and this air mass are cold, dry, and stable. These air masses originate over northern Canada and Alaska. As a result of radiational cooling, they move southward east of Rockies into the plains, then eastward continental, and then eastward. Continental polar or continental Arctic air masses are marked by surface high pressure, cold temperatures, and low dew points. So these are the characteristics of the polar continental air mass. And this brings rattling cold, dry, and clear weather on a perfect winter day and also dry and warm weather on a pleasant day in the summer. So kapag meron tayong polar continental air mass on a winter, it will have a clear sky winter or parang malamig lang talaga yung hangin na nadala ng polar continental. Bakit maganda yung weather? Kasi wala naman tayo halos na humidity. Again, ang nagpapasama naman ng weather dyan is the humidity. If there is a build-up of humidity, dyan tayo nagkakaroon ng sinasabi nating change in weather. At syempre, kung magkakaroon naman tayo ng polar continental in the summer, there will be also a pleasant weather kasi wala naman tayo halos build up ng clouds. Sa kukuha ng clouds, almost dry nga yung humidity. That is the polar continental air mass. Another air mass is the polar maritime or PM air mass. And this is a cool, moist, and unstable. You see, from the word moist, masasabi na natin na this kind of air mass have high relative humidity or mataas yung kanyang moisture content. Kasi from the word maritime as a classification of air mass, ay maritime air mass o yung sinasabi nating dalawa lang yan continental and maritime. The maritime air mass have the moist or yung mataas yung relative humidity ng air mass na to compare mo doon sa continental. And some polar maritime air mass originate as continental polar air mass over Asia and move westward over the Pacific, collecting warmth and moisture from the ocean. Some polar maritime air masses originate from the North Atlantic and move southwestward toward the northeast states. The latter air mass generally is colder and drier than the polar maritime of the Pacific. Convection over the sea results in cumulus and cumulonimbus clouds, which in winter on the western side of the British Isles. So, as we can see in the picture, this is the British Isles. And in the winter, on the western side of the British Isles are accompanied by showers of rain. Okay, so makikita na natin agad kung sa continental air masses, maganda yung panahon. Dito sa maritime air masses, just like the polar air mass, meron na agad tayo ditong showers of rain. Sleet or snow. Ibig sabihin, meron na tayong precipitation. Eastern areas of the country experience little or no cloud cover, thus favoring the development of hoarfrost or radiation fog during the night. So yung hoarfrost, for example, uh, meron tayo mga naka-expose na, for example, an object. Naka-expose siya, just like a window. Okay? So natamaan siya ng moisture galing sa atmosphere and then nahipan siya ng super cold wind or super cold air. So magkakaroon ito ng ice formation. That's why it is called hoarfrost. Air temperatures are generally the seasonal average in summer and in summer convection occurs over sea and land. And cloud cover is widespread with associated showers of rain, hail, and possibly thunderstorm. The air mass is cool with air temperatures below seasonal average. So masasabi natin from the word cool, masasabi natin maganda yung panahon. Pero it is a maritime air mass. Ibig sabihin, rampant yung pag-ulan or rampant yung precipitation over these or under these maritime air mass. Last air mass sa ating group is the Arctic air mass. Arctic air mass are masses forming over the Arctic basin or yung sinasabi nating Antarctic Circle. It is normally experienced only in winter and spring, and they are characterized by low temperatures and low humidity and clear skies. As a result of cyclonic activity, Arctic air masses may be displaced to lower latitudes where they cause a drop in the temperature. So those are the different air masses na nagbibigay sa atin ng, for example, a fine weather or a rainy weather or some precipitations. Bakit ba may area na ganito na wala man lang halos pag-ulan? Bakit may area na lagi na lang inuulan? It's because of different air masses. Yes. In the next lecture, we will talk about ano ba yung nasa harapan ng air mass na to. Okay, so paano ba masasabi natin o paano natin mababasa sa isang weather chart or tinatawag nating synoptic chart? Okay, synoptic chart. Ayan. So, ano ba pa naman natin masasabi sa isang synoptic chart na meron tayo ditong warm air mass o meron tayong warm air or cool air or cold air. So, sa ating next lecture. Okay. So, this is your instructor for this course, second mate Melvin Casanova, Meteorology and Oceanography 1.